Juan-Carlos. I am a current undergrad student at the University of Houston, and today I'm presenting on one of the codes in the Code of Ethics from the National Society of Professional Engineers. Now, first, some background. What is the National Society of Professional Engineers? Well, the National Society of Professional Engineers was founded by a man named David Steinman. As you can see on the right, there's a photo of him in May of 1934. Now, David Steinman lived in an era when there were no nationalized groups or no nationalized organizations for engineers at the time. They were all localized at the state level. And it was then that he had an idea to call upon all these different organizations and societies of engineers in the states around him to come together so they could form an even greater national level of engineering. And the four different organizations he called upon were the New Jersey Association of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors, the New York State Society of Professional Engineers, the Connecticut Society of Professional Engineers, and the Pennsylvania Society of Professional Engineers. Now, when it was first formed, they had two different subsections of goals in mind, and one of them was ethics. That was a super important thing for them. They wanted to make sure that they could protect everyone, including other engineers, from unqualified and people that were cutting corners, so unqualified engineers. And they wanted to make sure they were getting correct compensation for the work that they were doing, as it is very important. It's not only lifestyle designs and builds, but it's also life endangering potentially. And the second subsection was recognition. At the time, in 1934, the engineers were not receiving that much recognition. People then might not really knew what they did, or if they did, they didn't see them as this sort of professional way in the way that doctors have always been seen. So that was another goal of this national level organization they wanted to design. Now, second, what is the Code of Ethics? Well, the National Society of Professional Engineers didn't always have a code of ethics. In fact, they started out with something called the Canon of Ethics for Professional Engineers. Now, this all started, the first mention ever of anything having to do with a guideline book for ethics was in a magazine that the National Society of Professional Engineers used to publish called The American Engineer. In that magazine, somebody had submitted a suggestion for maybe a rule book or a guideline book for ethics for engineers. Now, at the time, they thought that was a good idea, so the National Society of Professional Engineers made a joint committee using the Engineers Council of Professional Development, and the Engineering Council of Professional Development was actually the one who sponsored it, and they came together and they sat down and they created the Canon of Ethics for Professional Engineers. Now, this lasted for some time. They had many revisions. The Canon of Ethics was revised multiple times. However, so finally, July of 1964, the National Society of Professional Engineers came together and decided to create a new guideline book for engineering ethics. And that is what we currently know as the Code of Ethics. And since July of 1964, there have been 25 amendments and additions to the Code of Ethics. Now, the code that I am focusing on today is code number 3. And code number 3 specifically says that engineers shall avoid all conduct or practice that deceives the public. That is straight out of the National Society of Professional Engineers Code of Ethics handbook. Now, in that section, there are 3 subcodes. And in the subcodes, the first one is relating to the omission or the misrepresentation of material fact when it comes to giving information to the public. And this has very much to do with the credibility of engineers. So when it comes to ethics, we want the citizens of anywhere, wherever we're designing or building or doing our job, to have credibility with us. So if we're lying to them, then that's going to damage our reputation, going to damage our credibility, and we want to make sure that they know what's going on, that we don't want to lie to them or potentially endanger them or do anything of that sort. So that first subcode, A, has mostly to do with engineering credibility. Now, the second subcode is the permission for engineers to recruit personnel. And this one is a little different than the rest. And I believe that this one has to do with qualification. That as an engineer, we know what's going on, what's being built, what's being designed, what's happening right now. So we want to make sure that there are people who also know, people who can perform the job that we have required for them. So that's what I believe that second subcode is all about, is making sure that if we were to hire some personnel for whatever project we're doing, that they are qualified, that we know the science or whatever's behind the job that we're doing. And the third subcode is, when it comes to writing articles released for the press, is to not take credit for any other work, whatever that work may be, even if it's down to hammering a nail. So this also comes back to credibility and trust with the public, and making sure that they know that we're credible, that we're honest, and that we're making sure that everything's done in the proper and right way. These are my references. Thank you.